Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Today is the day that God gave you another moment. He, she, they, God. Energize your cells, and your cells comprise the self. When your cells get hungry, you feed them. You're not hungry, your cells are. And this is why you're a billionaire, because 30 days after inception, your mommy and daddy got together, 2 cells became 4, 4 became 8, 8 became 16, so forth and so on for 30 days. At that 30-day mark, you were over 1 billion cells and you hadn't hit the planet yet. So now it's time for you to realize your value in this omniverse and live a life. Message done. Today, my guest is one that I've been looking forward to because I suffer seriously about remembering things. You know, my head is very big, so there's a lot of room for things to bounce around, but they never settle. So Chester Santos is going to help us get our memories on track. How are you, Chester?
I'm doing really well, Emmett. I'm very excited about talking with you today. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. First of all, I always start with what got you to now. So there are so many people who have extraordinary memories, but they just do whatever they do. But you took it to the next level. You made it your vocation in life and to share your message that everybody can have an extraordinary memory. How did you come to that?
Yeah, Emmett, it was pretty random how I ended up where I'm at today. I was flipping channels one night way back in the year 2000, so 21 years ago at this point, and I happened to catch a segment on ABC's 2020, that evening news program. They had a segment on the USA National Memory Championship. And it just sparked my interest because I would often get the comment from people. People would just say to me, wow, you have a really good memory. So with those comments kind of in the back of my mind, when I saw the episode, I thought, hey, maybe I can do well in this, national memory competition. But I quickly found out when I looked into what the best people in the country were scoring in the various events, memorizing hundreds of names, hundreds of computer-generated random digits, decks of playing cards in just minutes perfectly. I quickly found out that although I was probably above average to begin with, I wasn't on that level.
Yeah.
So that's when I started doing a lot of research into, how can one improve their memory from where it's currently at. I experimented with a lot of different techniques, found what was working best for me personally, stuck to training myself in that small subset of techniques until eventually I did manage to win the USA National Memory Championship. And since then, I've spent it's about 12 plus years now training other people around the world. It's in over 30 different countries at this point, and how they can develop powerful memory skills and use those skills to become more successful in your career, personal life, and also to help out your kids in school.
Now, with that, I want to talk about this competition. How did the competition change your life? So you win the competition, you go home and you're like, okay, that's done. What chain of events fell into place that things started to alter your course of what you were doing?
Yeah, so I realized in the course of competing over the years, as I started to develop my memory skills, I realized that the types of techniques that I was using would be useful not only in the competition, but could be useful for, remembering presentations, for getting more out of business networking by remembering people's names, processes, procedures, training material. So when I did win, I was immediately interviewed on CNN within a couple of days after winning. And over the years, I've just really built up, I guess, my resume in the field of memory skills development. I've been fortunate enough to be on a lot of different TV shows and newspapers, magazines. So it's just given me that credibility to be a memory skills trainer to help other people develop these skills and really give presentations all around the world.
After that, did you have to do any marketing, or did it become like a natural process? Did people start to seek you out, or did you say, hey, you saw an opportunity and you said, I'm going to let people know that this is available? Or was it one of those or a combination?
Yeah, very good question there. So I started getting a lot of media attention right away, just kind of automatically.
Mm.
After winning that competition, it was a televised event the year that I won. And I just leveraged that basically into creating my own courses. I started off locally in San Francisco with a one-day workshop, and I used the media kind of in my marketing material. So as seen on CNN, as quoted in Time magazine, so that helped to sell tickets to my San Francisco workshop. And then I started getting offered speaking engagements. So in other words, someone would take my workshop in San Francisco, but they might be a member of an organization that has, for instance, chapters all over the world where they invite speakers. So it kind of took off from there. And again, we're 12 plus years into it now. So I've been fortunate enough to really build up my resume and give speeches now in more than 30 different countries.
Awesome. What are some of the principles, some of the basics? Because I am going to be honest with you, I struggle with memory, remembering things. I remember faces really well. I can get tasks done. As a matter of fact, I'm a list person. I know that there's so many things, and I do so many things in my life, daily life, that I have hard times just remembering the small things. So what are some of those principles that can help us to move towards that powerful memory?
Yeah, very good question. So there are three main principles that will always apply no matter the specific information type or the specific technique that you end up using. Principle number one is going to be visualization. So turn whatever it is that you want to remember in some way into something that you can picture in your mind. So an example that I like to give, let's say you go to a party, all right, with one of your friends, you meet a lot of new people. 2 weeks after that party is over, you're talking with your friend that was there with you, and your friend describes someone to you. Hey, Emmett, do you remember the attorney that we met a couple of weeks ago? He's also a member of the local golf club. As your friend is describing the person, a lot of times you can picture who they're describing, right? You can see them in your mind. You might even remember what they were wearing and see that in your mind, right? But you can't a lot of times remember the name. Your friend also can't remember the person's name. It's really frustrating to both of you. So that example there illustrates something that you yourself described before I even got into the first principle, and that is that most people tend to be pretty good at remembering faces, right? But they're not nearly as good at remembering names.
Correct.
And that is because when you are interacting with people in various ways, you actually see their face, right? When you're at the party, you saw the person's face, it was recorded into your visual memory, but the name is something much more abstract to our brain. So a way that you can become better at remembering names is to try and, when you're meeting people, turn the name into a powerful visual. So if I meet someone named Mike, I might picture a microphone. If I'm meeting someone named Alice, I might picture a white rabbit because that reminds me of Alice in Wonderland, okay? It sounds a little bit weird, but it's actually very effective. A lot of times I will open presentations around the world with naming hundreds of people in the audience after just meeting everybody before the presentation starts. It's by utilizing the powerful visual representation of the name. I can get into names and more details later on if we have time in the interview. Just let me know when we're getting toward the end if there's time left. But really what I wanted to do there is kind of expand on that main principle, visualization. All right. That's very important. Principle number 2, after a visual, try to involve as many more senses as you can from there. Because as you involve more senses, you're activating more areas of the brain and you're building more connections in your mind to the information. So if people want to check it out at some point, I starred in an episode of PBS's Neuroscience. The episode was titled "How Smart Can We Get?" Or it's probably easier just to Google me, Chester Santos, and PBS. You'll be able to watch it for free on the PBS website. So they had me perform some crazy memory feats. Then they had me train David Pogue. People might know him from the New York Times and CBS News. And after just a little training, he was able to perform some pretty cool memory feats. Next, they had some brain scientists come on the show and explain for people watching at home, okay, how in the world did Chester do that? How did David Pogue pull it off with just a little bit of training from Chester? And these brain scientists, neuroscientists confirm that it's because with these memory techniques that I've mastered over the years and that we'll try to help your audience learn a bit about today during the interview, what's happening is we're recruiting extra areas of the brain that most people don't involve when trying to commit things to memory. And part of that is learning to use more senses in order to activate more of your brain. So that's the second principle. Yep.
It's something that it's funny that you say that, because in my scenario, if someone has a unique, good scent, I will remember them more than just, the clothes that they're wearing. I mean, now that you say bringing in more senses, how that can trigger memories or recall of memories. Awesome. What's more principles?
Yeah, definitely. So you got it right. You're activating more of the brain as you add more senses to the encoding process. Third and final principle is simply, while you are seeing and experiencing all of this in your minds, try to make it all crazy, unusual, extraordinary in some way, because there is a psychological aspect to human memory that we can all relate to. We remember things that catch us by surprise, right? That are pretty weird or extraordinary in some way. If, at this moment, if the location that you're recording in, and for people that watch or listen to this interview later, if in the room that they're in, if an elephant crashed into the room at this moment, if it actually happened at this moment and the elephant started to spray water on you, you would probably remember that for the rest of your life.
Yes, I would. That's absolutely
true. And even 40 years from now, you might be telling the story. On my show, I was interviewing this memory guy, and as we were doing the interview, you'll never believe it, an elephant crashed into the room and started to spray water all over me. It was just, the most extraordinary thing. So that could be stuck in your memory forever without you even trying to commit it to long-term memory, right? And to this day, scientists still don't fully understand how that works in the brain, how sometimes in one instant, something will go straight into long-term memory and stay there, whereas other times, we're trying to memorize a presentation for work, or we're trying to memorize some foreign language vocabulary, some training material, process and procedures. We're spending sometimes weeks and we can't get it into long-term memory, right?
Yeah.
Although the process isn't fully understood, we just need to realize that there is a psychological aspect to human memory, and realizing it, we can take advantage of it, harness that, and apply it to things that would be useful, like names, to get more to business networking. And really, when you're able to combine those three principles, visualization, additional senses from there, and use your creativity and imagination to make it all weird and unusual, when you put those three principles together, instantly you're going to notice a dramatic improvement in your ability to remember just about anything.
What about emotional context? Is there some way you can conjure an emotional context? Because I know when people experience emotional scenarios, it's bonded to them so much more. So, for instance, if I go to a party and someone's really attractive, you tend to remember their name.
Yeah, definitely. So emotions are very applicable to memory in both the positive and negative respects. In that, what I mean by this is sometimes a very powerful emotion, a lot of emotion surrounding event can either one solidify it into your memory almost forever, right? Definitely keep it in your memory longer term. However, if it reaches that point to where it's actually a very traumatic event, right? A traumatic emotional experience, in some cases, it can cause blocks in your memory, right? So emotion can be very tricky in terms of how it affects your memory. It can help your memory or it can hinder it. It just depends, I guess, really on the circumstances.
So, you've given us some really great principles, but to some people it might be like, I'm still not getting it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, or they've tried some variation of that, or they just haven't found the key. Because it seems like you're the baker confectioner. You found the recipes to put these things together. So, are there some exercises that people can try on the regular? You know, because I can understand that some people might be saying, I need to do these things, but they're trying them, it's not really resonating with them. So they quit. It's kind of like the gym in January. Everybody goes to the gym and then about a month later they quit. So are there some exercises that people can perform daily, weekly, periodically that can help them along this the path?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to go through an interactive exercise with you now, Emmett, using you as the
Oh
guinea pig
no.
if you're up for it. It doesn't really matter how you do, just, relax, try your best. Really, what we want is for you to try to put those three principles into practice, and your audience can follow along with the exercise, see how they do. And later on, we can even, after the exercise is completed, maybe go over how, we could apply that to business, studies, personal life, and so on. But let's try an interactive exercise. It'll take 5 minutes or less grand total. What we'll do here is I'll very quickly have you try to commit to memory a long random list of words. It's going to be simple words we'll use here. It will be monkey, iron, rope, kite, house, paper, shoe, worm, envelope, pencil, river, rock, tree, cheese, and dollar. Now, I know it sounds a bit daunting perhaps when I have live audiences, when I can see everyone in the audience looking at me. If this were a presentation at a conference, for instance, people at this point usually look at me as if I'm a bit crazy, and I can tell that they think there's no way they would be able to commit those words to memory unless I gave them a lot of time to do it. But in fact, you can pull this off in just a few minutes without any sort of memory training, without realizing how to put those principles that we talked about earlier into practice. How most people would approach this, they would write out the words over and over again, right? They would recite the words over and over again, read them over and over until they feel that the information is drilled into their head. When you do things like that, you are not making the most efficient use of your brain to encode the information into memory. And if you manage to finally get it down, it's only going to probably stay in memory in the very short term.
Yeah.
Instead, we're going to try a more fun and interesting approach that is going to be more effective in terms of long-term memory. I'm just going to have you visualize what I described to you. That's it. So the whole key to this for you, Emmett, and for your audience following along, just relax. If you're smiling and giggling during the exercise, it's a very good sign. So I want for you to just I want you to just visualize a monkey. That's it, because it was the first word. So just visualize a monkey in your mind. You can do this with your eyes opened or closed, whatever's most comfortable for you. Definitely, if someone's driving, listening to this, keep your eyes open at this point.
Actually, I was close to it because the only thing I probably would do a lot better. So let me give you this initial
Yep.
because I remember monkey, iron,
Yeah.
rope, and that's where it lost because it started going too fast. Because I did what you said. When you said
Yeah.
monkey, I pictured a monkey
Perfect.
holding
Yeah.
a 9 iron with a rope
Good.
to it.
Good job. Yeah. So we're going to try to build a little story incorporating all of those random words and also some of those other principles that I talked about, right? So we're going to add, in certain cases, a little bit more to the visual. So you are on the right track there already. So we've got this monkey, all right? It's making, though, monkey noises. I want you to imagine that you can even hear the monkey, boop, 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 whatever a monkey would sound like, all right? I'm working on that monkey and impression here, but just see and hear the monkey if you can in your minds.
Okay.
The monkey now picks up a gigantic iron. All right, it picks up an iron. The iron starts to fall, but a rope attaches itself to the iron. All right, picture that, and maybe even feel the rope. Imagine, really stretch your imagination. Imagine that you're feeling the rope. Maybe it feels sort of rough, because again, as you do that, you're activating more of the brain. So you can feel the rope. You look up the rope, you see that it's attached to a kite. All right.
Ah.
The kite is flying around in the air. Maybe even try to, stretch there and reach that kite. Okay. The kite now crashes into the side of a house. So visualize that it crashes into the side of a house. The house, you notice, is completely covered in paper. For some strange reason, it's completely covered in paper. Just picture that. Out of nowhere, a shoe appears and it starts to walk all over the paper. Maybe it's messing up the paper as it's walking on it, that shoe. The shoe smells kind of badly, so you decide to investigate and see why. You look inside of the shoe and you find a little smelly worm crawling around inside of the shoe. Really see that worm. Next word was worm. The worm now jumps out of the shoe and into an envelope. Maybe it's going to mail itself or something, I don't know, but envelope was the next word. Out of thin air, magically a pencil appears, all right, and it starts to write all over the envelope. Really see that pencil. Maybe it's addressing the envelope, I don't know, but the next word was pencil. So see the pencil. It jumps now, the pencil jumps into a river, and there's a huge splash like you would never expect to see happen when the pencil hits the river. The river, you notice, is crashing up against a giant rock, all right? It's crashing up against a giant rock. That rock flies out of the river and it crashes into a tree. The tree is growing cheese. You probably haven't seen a tree like that one. This one is growing cheese, and out of each piece of cheese shoots $1. All right. The last word was dollar. All right. So that was it. A lot of people may already know all of the words, but I'm going to run through this again in about 30 seconds or less now. And you'll just replay through this little story that you've created in your mind. So we started off with a monkey. What was the monkey dancing around with? It was an iron. What then attached it was a rope. The other end of the rope was attached to what? It was attached to a kite. That crashed into something. It crashed into a house. What was the house covered in? It was covered in paper. Something walked on it. It was a shoe, right? What was crawling in that shoe? It was a worm. The worm then jumped into an envelope, right? What wrote on the envelope? It was a pencil. Yeah, the pencil jumped into the river. The river was crashing into the rock. That rock flew into a tree. The tree was growing something. What was it? It was cheese. And what came out of the cheese? It was $1. So now you should be able to recall the entire random list of words pretty easily by simply playing through that story in your mind. Each major object that you see is going to give you the next random word. So Emmett, just give it a try, do your best, take your time, and your audience can follow along and see how they do as you're attempting to go through it. So just take your time.
So, yeah, I already know about this. So, monkey, iron, rope, kite, river,
No, that's okay. The kite crashed into the house.
house that was covered
Keep
in
going.
paper.
You got it.
I'm horrible.
That's okay. I'm going to guide you through it.
No,
So
this
paper.
works. I know it works. It's
So
just,
paper. What was crawling on? What was walking on
worm.
the paper?
No, a shoe.
You got it. Now
And then the shoe was a worm.
you got it. The worm jumped into what? Envelope.
Envelope.
What wrote on the envelope?
A pencil.
The pencil jumped into.
Horrible.
That's okay. It was a river.
Yeah.
All right. The river was crashing up against what?
A rock.
You got it. And that flew into a
House.
Nope.
Nope.
That's okay. That flew into a tree.
Tree.
What was the tree growing?
I am so horrible at this.
No problem.
I know, and I know the audience is probably going cheering me on right now.
No, it's all right. The tree was growing actually cheese. And what came out of the cheese?
I am so on the spot.
Dollar came out of the cheese. So it's always more difficult, of course, when I am the one creating the story, right? But if you were to create your own story, it would be much easier. But this whole exercise is just to demonstrate how we're tying together those three main principles of visuals, involving additional senses as we can. And that whole entire story is crazy unusual. It's pretty out there, right?
Yeah.
So when you use this idea to create your own story, it's going to be even more effective. Now, when you have any blanks, right? So for instance, you didn't exactly remember what was perhaps crawling in the shoe, right? It was a worm. So you want to really smell the worm. It's really smelly. Maybe you even touch it and it feels very slimy, right? And then you get really crazy and you decide to even take a bite of the worm maybe and see what it tastes like. I know, but the point here is as you then add more senses and make it even more crazy unusual, you're going to eliminate any blanks that you might have had in the story. And again, if you will do that and use your own story, this is going to work incredibly well. So that first technique there is called the story method, and it's just one of many techniques that memory champions like myself use to pull off what at first seemed like, when I do these on TV shows, it seems like, how the heck did he memorize that in, 30 seconds? But it's just really the right technique and a little bit of fun training and practice.
So does it work with names too? Because I am a trainer.
Yeah.
And I have upwards to 40 people in a class, and it's just me. And I am directing them to do physical activities. And I swear to you not, a lot of times I'm like, hey, you, because the area that I perform in, it's not advantageous for you to have a name tag. Can you use this same method, or is there a different method for memorizing names or a group of names?
Yeah, definitely. So again, with just a little bit of training, memorizing a room of 30 to 40 names should be very attainable, pretty easy for anyone. I do, 200 plus people in an audience sometimes, but, I've spent really a lot of many years training, but I think it'll only take, maybe a few weeks with, rigorous training and the right approach to get 30 or 40 names in a classroom situation. So those three principles apply. You want to come up with a visual representation of the name. So I had hit on, like a microphone for Mike or a white rabbit for Alice, but there's an additional step. You want to link that image to something that is unique to you about that particular person's look. So if I'm meeting Mike, and to me, this particular Mike that I'm meeting, he has cool looking hair, I might imagine that the microphone is getting tangled up in his hair. Okay.
That's awesome.
If I think that, the Alice that I'm meeting has really cool or interesting looking eyes, I might imagine that the white rabbit is coming out of one of her eyes or something like that. So what happens is, with that imagery linked to the unique feature, the next time you need to remember the person's name, all you have to do is ask yourself, what is unique to you personally about their look? Okay. What you personally noticed about them before is very likely what you are going to notice again.
Right.
And the image that you place there is going to come right back to you. So if you noticed her eyes before, you'll notice them again. You'll see the white rabbit coming out. Oh, white rabbit. That's Alice in Wonderland. Alice. Oh, he had cool looking hair. That's right. The microphone was getting tangled up in his hair. So his name is Mike. So that's how it works. It just takes a little bit of practice. I promise you, anybody can get good at doing it. You just need to get started.
So with COVID, it is changed. The last almost year has literally changed the paradigm of everyone. You're going out to speak. What have you done to adapt to this new paradigm that we were experiencing?
Yeah, so the number one thing that I've done, since I haven't been able to give speeches around the world like I was doing previous to COVID, all of the conferences and corporate events are mostly canceled. I would say there's like 10 to 20% of the events that there used to be. And of course, those events would be online only. So I am mainly doing podcast interviews like I'm doing with you today. So that's really the main switch I did to make people aware of the training that I offer. I have an online school, memoryschool.net. You could visualize a giant, maybe fishing net to remember that it's .net. So memoryschool.net. And I've just been talking about these types of techniques and how people can go to the online school for further training through podcast interviews. That's been the main way, and any online events that I can do. But again, everything's just been pretty limited in the corporate meeting and conference space since COVID.
So are you having any Zoom meetings yourself or any group sessions that you can demonstrate and help people in mass with?
Yeah, so not really live Zoom. I've been doing a 1-day San Francisco workshop for 12 plus years, but it's a 7+ hour workshop, including a 1 hour lunch break in the middle. So it isn't really something that's conducive to Zoom, like just a 1 hour webinar or 1 hour business meeting. So instead, what I did was convert it to an online course, and that is part of the online memory school. So memoryschool.net contains a core training program, which is basically the equivalent of that 1-day San Francisco workshop. And then I added even more. There's an advanced program and there's ongoing training, more videos that I upload each month with fun and interactive exercises. So it's really the memory school now that I'm using to help people around the world.
Well, awesome. Where can people find you? Website, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, whatever you have, because this is some really powerful stuff, especially now, because a lot of people have been secluded. So they're losing some of these interpersonal skills. And one of them is memory. You're like, I can't remember these people's name because you haven't had to practice. You've only had to see your Amazon guy, the UPS guy, your kids, and maybe partner. So give us it all.
Yeah, definitely. So memory is fundamental to learning. It's going to have a positive impact on multiple areas of your career, personal life. If you have kids or grandkids in school, learning these types of techniques will cut their study time in half, improve retention. It's a more fun and interesting framework for them to use. You're going to get more out of business networking. Remember processes, procedures, training material. It's going to be just hugely beneficial in business in so many ways. So memoryschool.net is where to go for further training. I did set up coupon code billionaire for your audience in particular. The only catch is that I set it to 25 uses max. So you just need to be one of the first 25 people to use code billionaire. That will set the enrollment fee down to $0 for you. Instead of normally it's a $200 enrollment fee, it will set it down to zero. So check that out for further training. memoryschool.net, code is billionaire. And then to keep in touch with me on social media, I am on LinkedIn, just Chester Santos on LinkedIn, Instagram, Chester J. Santos. And people might find that interesting. I visit famous locations around the world and talk about how they relate in some way to memory and the brain. So you'll see me at the Colosseum in Rome. I was just at Chichen Itza, another one of the seven wonders of the world, and talked about how the ancient Mayans were very creative and innovative due to their broad knowledge base, at least in terms of their time period. So people might find that interesting. Chester J. Santos on Instagram.
I got one last question.
Yeah.
Has anyone done neurological studies related to as their memory has improved? We know that there are neurological studies with Alzheimer's and some of the things that affect the brain and memory, but have there been studies that show someone who said, I don't have a great memory and developed a great memory?
Yeah, so what I can say is that people like myself who have trained their memories to a very high degree, I was part of something called the Superior Memory Project over at Washington University in St. Louis. So they did some memory experiments on me, along with other memory champions, and also Jeopardy champions were included in the study. So people can do a Google search and find out some info on the Superior Memory Project at WashU in St. Louis. And also, I have been invited to have my brain scanned while I'm memorizing things like that. I just haven't been. I'm a little bit scared of going in an MRI machine. Actually, I'm weird like that, I guess. But some of my fellow memory champions I know have done it, and they just find that, of course, as you would expect, while we are committing things to memory, so much more of our brain is activated than the average person that hasn't gone through this training. So it's just as I described earlier, and just as the neuroscientist described on the episode of PBS Nova Science. With these techniques, you're using more of the brain to encode things into memory, and that's why they're very powerful and effective.
Well, Mr. Santos, I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope people got a lot out of it. I hope they'll keep in touch, maybe check out the memoryschool.net, and I hope that you'll keep in touch with me, Emmett.
Oh, certainly will. Ladies and gentlemen, remember this. Tomorrow is not here. Yesterday is gone. All you have is right now. Right now is an evolving thing. This kind of reminds me of what we're talking about now, because one of the things that I thought about was sometimes we don't remember things because we are not conscious. And what I mean by that is you have to be conscious. We are human beings. And I say it a little different. We're HUE because everybody is underneath the sun. We all worship the sun. Get it? And that sun gives us color. Doesn't matter what you are because no one is translucent. We are in the image of man. And here's where it gets a little dicey. As we've seen in the United States and all across the world, the being part. There's one thing that I always think about this, and people ask me, Emmett, how do you stay so calm? I said, do you know the principle of winning a track race? What's one of the founding principles? They say, come in first? I go, no, stay in your lane. You have a path that's a billionaire path. If you stay on your path, stop looking at the lanes of everyone else. If you stay on your path, you will be golden. But when you do look at another lane and you see a person that is running their race,